agenda for the third time to request funding for full upgrade and modernization of our elevators in the Circuit Court House building. At our last meeting on May 20th, as the board discussed the problems associated with the maintenance of the elevators in the Circuit Court building, the elevators again, for the 11th time since January, were out of order. And each time the elevators are not functioning, the elevators are out on an average of 1 week. From January to the end of May, we're talking about 20 weeks. Out of 20 weeks, 11 weeks, the elevators were not operating properly. I received, again, numerous complaints because my office is located in the Circuit Court building, and many citizens know that I'm on the second floor. So they come to my office and complain. The deputies are complaining. One of the problems that the deputies have is the fact that when the elevators are not working, those individuals that cannot climb the stairs are directed to the staff/service elevators. And the judges use those particular staff service elevators, and they're concerned about the security of the judges who enter in and out of the building. We had this board requested to conduct an inspection of the elevators, and the company selected was Scott Woods. And I requested Mr. Woods to come to the board meeting this morning to discuss his findings and recommendations. And Mr. Woods, would you come up, please?
Good morning. I'm Scott Woods. She said I'm a mechanical engineer. I've worked off and on for the county on mechanical equipment, elevator surveys, and specifications for upgrades. This particular set of elevators in Hinds County, in the courthouse, we went and surveyed the two main elevators. I got an independent elevator inspector to go with me to inspect equipment. And we provided our opinion of the condition and recommendations for replacement. What we recommended was what we call modernization. That is essentially a full replacement with the exception of the rails, the weights, the shafts. The button controls have been upgraded to meet ADA, but the ADA chimes are not present, so the elevator can move. It has to chime when you pass the floor, when the door opens, when the door closes. That's not in place. Most of the slides, the rails, the mechanical equipment, over 25 years old. Average life of elevators and elevator equipment is 25 to 30 years old. The elevator generators are 50 years old. The old type generators run continuously. The new style only run when the elevator's moving. There's a energy savings of $8,000 to $10,000 a year by just changing the motors. That won't pay for the project, but that will possibly help. Archives and history. Our cost estimate that we provided for full replacement was $276,300. We verified these costs with an elevator supplier and manufacturer and checked it against other elevators that had been bid and installed.
Let me ask you a question real quick. Was that with Dixie Elevator, the person that currently working and fixing the repairs and repairing our service now?
No, sir. That was with Thyssen Krupp. I felt like on this, if we could use someone independent to go look at the entire system. Dixie is aware of the issues with the elevator. If it's voted to replace, then, it'll be publicly bid, and of course Dixie will bid. And this is my recommendation, to do a full modernization.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because Dixie is also doing a evaluation for the county as well. And we just want to make sure that whether or not you're collaborating with them, or are you completely independent of them?
I'm completely independent of them. I've talked to them on other issues and about these, but my survey, my recommendations are completely independent. Any other?
I don't have any questions. Any questions from any board member?
Yes, I have a question. Can those elevators, can we increase the weight limits on the elevators, and if so, how would we go about doing that? Because right now, there's a sign that posted that says only 6 people are allowed on the elevator at one given time.
The weight limit will be based on the motors, the cables, and the cab. So yes, those weight limits can be increased.
Okay. With the weight limit specifying 6 people, what is the average weight that we are talking about? Because oftentimes you can't tell what a person weighs. But even if 6 people are on the elevator, it's possible that.
Typically, it's dependent on the size of the actual elevator. 2,500 pounds will be a larger elevator, like your service elevator. 1,200, 1,500 pounds will be about average, but we can set that as you need.
Okay, Mr. Stokes.
Thank you. Doing your investigation, how much did you state that it would cost to make those needed repairs?
From my investigation, the needed repairs, the generators, the governors that control the speed, and I don't know if you've been in those elevators, the one on the right moves, it takes a minute or two to get from one floor to the other. My recommendation for the repairs or the modernization were to go ahead and completely redo the motors. International Building Code, and again, I'm a mechanical engineer, there are repairs that can be made to make them better. My recommendation was to go ahead and do the full modernization. If you change the controls in the motors, the building code says you bring the entire system up to code.
So how much?
$276,300 was my recommendation, and that was my cost estimate to fully modernize both elevators.
And the recommendations how we could fund it? I'm just asking.
Probably Ms. Davis asked, well, she sent out an email.
Well,
Can
I not answer?
It's a lot of money, but that's how you fund it. I really don't know.
Well, that's on the thing. See, we can sit up here and come in here and say, well, I'm gonna recommend that we do this and do that, but not identify in the money. In government, you call it unfunded mandates. Now, the key issue is going to be how you get it done at the end, almost the end of a budget year, with no money. Now, that's why I asked, did you find the money that you want to recommend that we use? And I've heard Ms. Davis say let's take money from Justice Court, but if we start taking this money from Justice Court, then we need to start taking all the money from Justice Court. That means for mosquito spraying, that would mean for summer job for the youth, that means for everything. Because you're taking money from an area that the Justice Court clerk said they need their money, but you didn't identify the money to pay for it. You just identified the amount that it would cost.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President.
One second. I'd like to speak to this particular issue. Unless you have some other questions, I don't think anyone has any other questions. The only thing I would say is that no one disputes the fact that the elevators do not need to be repaired. I think the fact is that we're at the end of a budget year, and how we're going to pay for this particular issue. We have a lot of issues coming up as far as restoring Pod C at the jail. Also, we have 2 other pods that we have to do, and we're strapped for money. So what we need to do is be very prudent as to how we're going to do this. And as I stated from the beginning, I think that we can find a way to do it in next year's budget, to do everything that we can do to complete the part of the section that deals with the ADA. We need to make sure that happens, and we need to also actually do the elevators or refurbish or restore or whatever to the elevators, but I think that we need to be prudent in how we do it and spending our money. We just simply don't have the money at this particular point in time, but our budget starts within a month. And I feel like that under our new budget, that we will have the money to do this, but we also have a lot of other issues. We have to bond money, but that bond money needs to go toward Pod A and B. We need to think about taking care of our employees, the county employees. They also need to be taken care of. So we have a lot of issues, and I don't think that we just need to make a decision based upon conjecture at this time as to how we need to restore these elevators. I also understand, Mr. Woods, that one of the reasons that the elevator was stuck is because if it's a capacity of 6 and on several occasions 8 or 9 people have gotten on the elevator. Well, a safety mechanism is that it's going to get stuck as opposed to operate when you exceed the weight capacity. But that's the only thing I want to say on the particular issue. Mrs. Kaplan.
Could we, there are funds available from the 310
Ms.
account, and those funds are bond funds that were set aside for the renovations of the Justice Court. We're not talking about taking funds from the Justice Court's budget. The Justice Court budget is derived from the general funds budget, not from account 310. In account 310, there's approximately $900,000, and we had issued a bond about a couple of years ago, it could have been more than that, to renovate and or relocate the Justice Court. And this morning we have with us Judge Britton, who can speak to what the Justice Court judges' desires are. But it's not what they need will not take up or will not utilize all of the $900,000 that's been set aside for the relocation. It was set aside for the relocation and or renovating a building to house the Justice Court.
Okay, Ms. Campbell, let's do this. If you have a motion to make, let's make the motion. Let's get the second, then we'll go into further discussion, and you can call whoever you'd like.
I would like for Judge Britton to come up at this time, and then also after seeing and listening to a newscast concerning some of the concerns of the Center for the American Disability Act, Dr. Crawford and Dr. Donaway are here this morning also to discuss some of their concerns.
Okay, do you have a motion? You want to go ahead and
Not
make a
at
motion?
this time.
Okay. All right, so you don't have a motion to make?
I do have one, but not at this time. I would like to hear from Judge Britton, please,
Okay.
to address any concerns the board members may have concerning the Justice Court.
Okay. Well, what I'm saying is normally what we would do is if you have a motion to make, you make the motion, you get a second, and then we discuss the issue. And you can bring up anyone that you would like during that particular point in time. But is there a point of discussing it if you don't have a motion?
I do have one, but not at this time.
Okay.
It's not official before.
It's not officially on the table if you do not have a motion. I'm just asking you to just simply make your motion. You make your motion, and then we'll let whoever you
My
want to talk.
motion is to allocate up to $270,300 for the upgrade and modernization of elevators. And the funds will come from account 310.
Okay.
And my second motion would be to advertise for the upgrade and modernization of the elevators.
Okay. It's been moved.
One motion, ma'am?
It's one motion. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Discussion.
Judge Britton, please.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning, Judge.
First, I'll entertain any questions or concerns that the board has, if you are having.
Questions from the board? I don't have any, Judge.
It has been mentioned in light of there not being any questions, it has been mentioned that there are funds, and I'm aware of those funds and what they were set aside for some years ago. The 310 budget, or the 310 allocation account, was for relocating the Justice Court into another facility. The first facility came up to move to the Mississippi Valley Title Building. We found that that facility was not adequate to provide the services that were needed and necessary. A second location was considered. Let me go back to the first one. Had no problem with the first one. The second one, I did have a problem and or a concern with going to the second one. That one had to do with us being in a building just as the Justice Court. And I was concerned with security, number one, or not necessarily in that order, number one, but that was one of my concerns. The other area of concern was it would give us no greater access to space than where we were presently located. So I am opposed to just having gone to the second location. As it presently stands, the facility where we are now in the circuit courthouse is pretty much adequate except at certain times. And at that time, or at those times, we're able to sometimes access either a county courtroom in courtroom 6 or courtroom 7. So there's not really a great problem necessarily with our having to go to another courtroom as far as adequate space is concerned on that. The clerk's office does need to be renovated. It does need some additional renovations and or possible upgrades. The carpet and a number of other things that I could mention, but it's not necessary to get into all of that right now. What you're asking basically is whether or not funds that are set aside for Justice Court can be accessed or utilized to upgrade the county courthouse. I have no problem with that. I feel that because of the access or the inaccessibility of people getting on those elevators, yes, it does need to be addressed. And for a small portion, or not necessarily a small portion, but for a portion of that money to be taken to upgrade the elevators, it helps not only Justice Court, it helps the DA's office, it helps the second floor access as well to the courthouse. So that's fine. That's fine with myself. I've discussed it with the other judges, and there has been no problem or concern with taking those monies or a portion of those monies and using them for an upgrade in the elevator system.
Okay. Any additional questions for the judge? Thank you very much, Judge. Okay.
This morning, we also have with us Dr. Crawford and Dr. Wade, and I would like to take them to this morning to discuss their concerns.
Mr. President, while they're getting prepared, we'll make sure that Judge Britton said it's okay to take the money from 310 accounts.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Calhoun contacted me about her concerns about the reliability of the elevators. We've already gone over that. ADA does have something to say about maintenance of accessible equipment. I'll go ahead and read it. It's very brief. A public accommodation shall maintain in operable working condition those features of facilities elevators is out. They're both out.
They both are down.
Okay, well that's a real problem with, providing access for people with disabilities. Now, in terms of funding this, I think that we, meaning the county, we need to be creative in seeking grant monies that can help renovate the courthouse. I think those monies are available. We just need to seek them out. And,
What grant money? I don't want to rip out. Now you say grant money, is that the federal government?
Federal grants, they require a local match, typically 20%.
Please, I know you said the city. Is there anyone y'all can get to work with us to apply for some of those grants? For Mr. Glees, I know of those grants.
I can help look up those things, but Tinny Moore is your ADA coordinator, and she can help with that. Mr. Williams.
Okay, go ahead, please. State your name.
Good morning. I'm Christy Dunaway with Living Independence for Everyone in Mississippi. Yes, sir, we'd be happy to work with Sam over at the city to try to help locate some grants. I think the city is aware of some of them, but there are federal grants available for this. But the judge was kind enough to offer the funding that you guys need to fix the elevators in the courthouse. Back in November, a group of people went over to the courthouse and did an accessibility survey because Dr. Crawford had been called for jury duty and was unable to serve due to the inaccessibility. And the county, particularly Mr. Williams, has worked beautifully with us since that time. They've hired an ADA coordinator. The elevators at the time of the survey, quite frankly, were the least of our concerns. Of course, now they've jumped to the top of the list because they're not working.
They were working that particular day.
Yeah, apparently so.
One of the things I want to make sure that, before you go any further is that the elevator issue is one that I don't think that you're going to get an argument from anyone up here. It's not the elevators, it's how we're going to pay for them. We have a budget process. And even though Judge Britton has said that it does not, that he would have no problem with using that particular money, we still have a budget process. We have to go by that budget process, and we're going to repair the elevators. Of course, they're not broken every day. The issues are being addressed every day. We're doing something every day. They're not broken every day. So I want to make sure that there's no misconception that we're not doing anything or we don't think this is an issue that we need to deal with. It is an issue that we need to deal with. It's an issue that we're dealing with on an ongoing basis. Now, whether or not it's an imminent or an emergency or of a critical nature, on some days it is and on some days it's not. But we have to make sure that we go through our budget process in doing anything that the county has to do as it relates to making these major repairs, because it's going to be a capital issue. And if it's a capital issue, then we need to make sure that we deal with it in a capital way. Just wanted to make sure I put that to let you know that the importance that the board, and that's every member, places on this particular issue. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we have enough money to pay our employees and pay our bills and everything else. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fisher.
Yeah, I think the arguments that are being offered here against this payment is just a smokescreen. The money can be moved. The board, by a majority vote, can move the money accordingly to anything they feel is an important opportunity. And I would also point out to the board that one of the reasons we have I call it the surplus. What do y'all call it? The super surplus.
Reserve.
The reserve is for just these sorts of things that that do come up, that put us out of compliance or put citizens at danger in county facilities. And we spent a lot of time here this morning, almost an hour and a half it looks like, and we still haven't we've just now gotten to the first issue while we've argued about these issues that we've argued about and rehashed over and over and over again, seemingly ad nauseum and to no end. I don't see why this is an issue. We can move the entire $900,000 somewhere if we chose to do so. This has nothing to do with employee pay. This has nothing to do with meeting the bills. We couldn't use the money for that. Or if we could, and that was an emergency, then we would be able to, if that's what the legal reading says, we could use those monies for. But this is something we can use the money for, and it seems silly to me that we continue to pass this issue off as, well, sometimes it's emergency, sometimes it's not an emergency, but hey, we got a budget process, we'll see you, not next month, but next October, because that's when the budget kicks in. We start talking about it this week, but we don't pass it until September 15th, and it doesn't take effect until October 1st, and that is 4 or 5 months down the line. So it's a lot more time of this being down and us being out of compliance. So I guess as I've been talking here, I've sort of raised the question, when does the ADA come in and file a suit or file a complaint or shut down, or how does that happen exactly?
Mr. Fisher, if those elevators are not fixed in a very timely manner, currently the Hinds County is out of compliance with federal law. If the elevators aren't fixed, or if we don't get some word, but I would say within the next week to 10 days that the money's going to be allocated to fix the elevators, I'm filing a Title III complaint with the Department of Justice.
Okay, now does that mean that they, what does that mean?
It means that I'm going to contact the Department of Justice and let them know that the County of Hinds is out of compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and as a result of that is putting people with disabilities in danger of getting on an elevator and getting stuck or getting injured.
Okay, and then so what will they do then?
They'll come in, somebody from the district here, the district of the U.S. Attorney's Office will come in and take a look at everything.
And I mean, what's the worst they can do? Can they shut down the elevators? Can they shut down the courthouse? Or just what can happen?
They would ask the County of Hinds to enter at least into negotiations and a settlement agreement to take care of the issues immediately.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Mr. Stokes?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I heard something from Supervisor Fisher. I think we can all, if I'm hearing right now, he's saying that we have $2.5 million in reserve, the super reserve. And I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth, but I think he's saying we can consider looking at debt as a way to pay for it. I'm not taking money from Justice Court, and I say that over and over and over again. But if we want to look at going into the supermajority reserve, then I'd be glad to look at it, but I think we should look at it. But Dr. Crawford, I don't want you to think, and I've seen you work with you all through the city, and you will help the sidewalk through the city, and you will help Sam Police, and I fought also when we got an ADA person to be a handicapped person also. But it was you who helped change a lot of things in the city. But I don't want to piecemeal this. You asked for a comprehensive repair to these courthouses. That's why you can't come to the mic, because you came up here, there's no way for handicapped people to get up. Now, just to do the elevators and don't do everything is not the right thing to do. And I asked the clerk some time ago, the county administrator some time ago, about a comprehensive repair of the courthouses, because it's raining in the courthouse and in the circuit courthouse. You have other issues, not just that affect handicap, but affect everybody. I complained about the elevators over a year or something ago when I had to go up them steps, and I hated every step of the steps. But again, I'm not going to try to take anyone from Justice Court, even though Judge said it's fine, because I want him to remember he said it, because as we go through the budget process, and they said what we're going to get money for mosquito spraying and what we're going to get money for summer jobs, I'm going to identify these monies. But I will support it. I'm going to send it publicly to you today. If the supervisor says, let's get the money from the reserve, where it take a super majority, it'll take everybody voting on it, I guess. When we passed it, 5, they said 4 out of 5. So I don't know if that's changed now to 3 out of 4. And we'll get legal give us a determination. If that's going to be the motion from the supervisor, I support it. But I want a comprehensive look at everything. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Got a survey, about the major deficiencies at the courthouse. Just Supervisor Fisher, just to answer your question, the ultimate consequence with not obeying the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ultimate consequence is that Hinds County could be sued, but ultimately the federal government could say, we're not giving you any more federal grants until you come into compliance with applicable civil rights law. That's the ultimate consequence.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Mrs. Calhoun?
Mr. President, I need to ask this one question. How much do you have
We have set aside 2.5 for
2.5 million.
2.5 million. Okay, I would like to make a motion that we,
We already have a motion on the floor.
I need to withdraw my motion.
Okay. And if you're going to withdraw your
I
second.
think your motion is to repair the elevator, basically.
Well, from the account
Or
3.
from that to account
But
3.
in regards to where the funds come
Okay.
from, the elevators need to be repaired. We had a young lady at our last board meeting on the 20th to say she has a heart condition. She said, I cannot climb those stairs. I come here quite frequently to conduct business in the courthouse, but I cannot climb the stairs. I had a lady just last week say to me, I was pregnant. And I got on the elevator, there was 3 of us on the elevator, and the elevator, I got stuck on the elevator. And she said, I was pregnant, and I started to hyperventilate. And I was as nauseated, there's no place for me to sit down, the floor was dirty, and what have she said, but I was actually sick when I got off.
So you're going to withdraw your second. He's going to withdraw a second. You're going to make an amendment. But before that, Judge Britton, is there one last thing you want to say on this particular issue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Would you go to the podium, please?
I shall.
And then Ms. Calhoun will make her motion. Mr. Stokes, go ahead.
Now, if we're going to look at the reserve, can we at least have to the next meeting? Because if we're going to take some from this super majority reserve that has never been done before, we have never touched that 2.5. And we only had it, I think, there was about, how many months? 6 months? So I would hope we'll wait till at least the next meeting, because just start taking money from the supermajority vote for it to reserve. We want to make sure we got other commitments made that we're going to put this money back as we go to the next budget year or something. We want to make sure that we have some commitments in writing that if we take this money, it's going to come back. Otherwise, we're going to start inching at this super majority reserve, and we won't have that any longer.
Okay, sir. Judge Britton?
Thank you. Yeah, there were $900 and some thousand set aside for relocation of Justice Court. It is not needed at this time nor necessary, but those funds are available. Let's get to something else. I heard some discussion or some mention about money being set aside can even be moved to whatever other project or projects that the board might have a concern with. Let me say this now. To take those funds and completely attempt to use them for, say, I heard the word pods in the jail. If monies that were set aside for Justice Court improvements are being considered in using for pods and whatever else, I and every single judge in Justice Court will adamantly oppose that idea. Okay? But the concern with the elevators is an ongoing and an immediate concern. We have no problem with that being addressed.
Okay?
But no, not all of that money being set aside for just various and unsundry things just because someone has a whim. No.
Right. That's the reason
The
we're
clerk of
talking
the
about
court,
the
I'm
budget.
sure, feels the same about that as the judge. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Judge. Mr. Fisher, can we go ahead and vote on this issue?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That money was set aside by a board vote.
Yes, sir.
We will take the money back if we want to, and if we need to for other projects. Have you or any other judge submitted a plan to us or any other method of spending that money that's been sitting there now for a while? Have you given us a plan? Have you sat down and said, this is what we want or need?
It was not necessary to come with a plan except
So in your mind, this
I'm
money
not
sits there
finished.
for
I have not completed my statement. It was not needed nor necessary to just come with a plan. Yes, we have concerns in Justice Court, but now the administrator has come to Justice Court She and I had a discussion some year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, about storage space. I've addressed some issues, but those issues are aside from what is presently being discussed, and that's about elevators.
But that's not what I asked you.
What are you asking?
What I'm asking you is, hey, you said this is what we want to spend the money on.
At what point?
At any
You mean
point.
today at any other or some
Any
other
point from when it was voted on to this moment.
No, I have not.
How long do you expect us to keep that money waiting for you to decide to spend it?
You can take
Now, we can take our
$276 right now and spend it.
$900,000, Judge. It's our money.
I understand what your authority is, sir, but I have some authority across the street as well.
Well, bring it on.
Okay, let's,
In my action at some future point. That's what it is.
This board has a fiduciary responsibility to this
Do
county.
what you must
And the
do
money
as
is
a
not
board, sir.
going-
Okay,
the
let's-
money is not
let's
going to
just-
sit there forever.
let's go back to the issue. Let's go back now. Let's get back in order. Let's go ahead, Mr. Fisher, and then we'll go back to Judge Britton, and then we'll go to Ms. Calhoun. Okay, Judge, is there anything that you'd like to say from this point?
There was one other issue, or one other area that I will speak to, and that is whenever I speak, anyone who knows me personally or professionally knows when I speak, I stand on what I speak on. And that is what I stand on, my word. Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Calhoun.
Anything else to me?
Let me say, just the Justice Court judges did not initially make a request to set aside those bond funds. This board made the decision that we would issue a bond to address some of the repair needs for Justice Court. Also, there is a general purpose that's stated in order for us to utilize the bond funds. As far as I'm concerned, some of the other repairs that are needed in the court building those funds can also address those additional repairs in the courthouse
Judge, thank you very much.
as well as address the elevator needs. But I'm willing to compromise. If you're saying, Supervisor Stokes, that we can, that you would vote to utilize $207,000 from the reserve fund, then I would vote for that, because we're here to serve the citizens, and those elevators need to be repaired. Again, if we wait until we go through our budget process, then that's going to take several more months. The new budget process will not be will utilize, as Supervisor Fisher said, in October. That's too long for those elevators to be out of order. So if you're willing to vote, now we did set aside, the purpose of setting aside the $2.5 million was to handle any emergencies or urgent needs that this board has in regards to maintenance. This is an urgent need. You've heard from individuals. You heard from Judge Britton. You heard from Dr. Crawford and Dr. Dunaway about the need to repair the elevators. They have stated this is a reliability issue, so we need to address that matter as well. So if you're willing to make a motion to utilize reserve funds, I'll second that motion.
Mr. President.
All right, Mr. Stokes.
Mr. President, when this issue first came up, my suggestion, and I have a waiver, and I want our older, was to get the county administrator to look at things. And I said at that point, touching Justice Court money was out of question. It's even other monies that can be found, even besides the reserve. But I think we need to look, and that's why you need a financial person like we have with Malachi to look at comprehensive the money for Hinds County. Let them make a recommendation to us. It's other monies. I haven't been there but a year and a half, and I can tell you some other monies that's out there. Now, the only thing about the hesitating about using this super majority reserve money is because we have never done it. But I don't mind biting that apple and doing it. But when we put that money in reserve for supermajority, we said we would not use it unless it's an absolute mandatory issue. And I think we got a couple other places to get this money. And I could just make some suggestions, but just on the different budgets that I know of. And one would probably be the, thank you, Mr. Brown. I put it with the county administrator and Malachi.
Okay,
Mr. President.
hold on 1 second. What we're going to do is we'll go with Mr. Calhoun, Mr. Fisher, and then we'll make a motion, and then we'll move on. Ms. Calhoun?
Mr. President, the county administrator has moved at where it would be more easily accessible and more feasible to get the funds. And the county administrator, just last week, made a recommendation to this board, and I would like to hear from her. Ms. Davis.
Ms. Davis, go ahead, please.
Good morning, board members. Yes, at the last meeting, it was requested to submit a statement in writing to the board as to available funds that could be used toward this matter. What was written as was spoken to last board meeting, and Fund 310 that we spoke about, the bond funds, would be an area to utilize for this purpose, as well as the general budget fund. Now, one thing I did say in writing is that I was reluctant to suggest using our current surplus funds. At that time, I mentioned about the surplus funds we do have available, in that we are approaching into our budget year, and was concerned about committing into some funds to that without knowing our financial picture from our assessed values, which establishes our future budget. So that was what was submitted to you in writing. Certainly, the reserve funds could be utilized, and that is certainly a decision of the board.
What about the 2010 fund?
That's what the 310 fund is, the 2010 fund.
All right, is there any other funding capacity or any of the funding funds that we have that we can use money from?
No, sir.
This is the only account that addresses courthouse issues. The board attorney can speak to the purpose for the issuance of the bonds for the 310 account.
Okay. Mr. Gaylor, if you want to speak to that, then we go to Mr. Fisher, and then we'll see if there's a motion to be made.
The sentiment that's been expressed is accurate, that those funds can be used for the purpose.
Okay. All right, Mr. Fisher.
The bond money can be used for this purpose. I think that it is frankly ridiculous that we're still up here discussing this, because the bond money can be used if that's what this board decided to do. If it's going to be such a big issue, then take it out of the reserve and then repay it during the budget discussion time, so that we get back up to that figure. But I think that what we're doing here, frankly, is everybody's saying not everybody, but everybody's saying they want to fix it. But then they're hiding behind, well, we can't use this fund or we can't use that fund to justify not fixing it. You either fix it or you don't. And if you don't fix it, then we know what's coming next. And I highly encourage that action. I highly encourage that action. If I can help you in any way, let me know. Because this is just silly. I mean, I just can't believe that we're going to let elevators in a building function inconsistently at best, and certainly not as safely as they should, simply over trying to save money out of a 310 fund that the Justice Court has no idea what they want to do with anyway. This whole thing is just another reason to not vote, to prevent votes or to block action by the board. And the technique that's being used is to simply say, well, wait a minute, before we vote on this, let's look at this other stuff, and then we'll vote on that. Let's do it next week. We're doing it in everything that we're doing. And that's a sad state of affairs. This money can be spent out of the 310 fund, But if it takes today to get it spent out of the reserve fund, then let's spend it out of that fund and then pay it back later. But for goodness sakes, let's move on this thing.
Okay, we started with Ms. Calhoun, we go with Mr. Stokes, and then Ms. Calhoun, and then we are finished with this issue. I'm not going to allow it to go on any further. What we'll do is we'll either have a motion or something from that particular point. Mr. Stokes, Ms. Calhoun, then that's it.
Mr. President, when I first became a member of this board, the Justice Court judges talked to me. That's how I knew they had the funds. And they even wanted to go to the old federal building and wanted to even try to purchase it. So those Justice Court judges, that's how I knew that their fund was there. They didn't want anybody to really touch their fund. But the area I was speaking about, I don't know what you're in now, the swap funds, it's plenty of money. That's why we need someone to find out where all the money. How much do we have in the swap fund now?
That is a reserve fund.
No, we're talking about, no, we're talking about.
That's separate.
That's separate?
Yeah. Let's try to keep it in order.
How much do we have in there? 2.2 million. That's what I'm saying. It's plenty of money everywhere, but they just won't take from the judge. But it ain't mine. I didn't bring it. It's plenty of place they could have found money to do this. And swap fund is one of them. 2.2 million. And but everybody wants to jump. No, y'all don't want to do it. Yeah, we want to do it, but we don't have to take money from Justice Court.
Will you make a motion to take it out of the swap fund?
No, I said that. I asked the clerk. I said, find what we can do. It's not getting Stokes' responsibility. That's why we need someone to find all the money in the county. Only reason I know about the swap fund, somebody told me. I've been here a year and a half. Everybody's been here a long time. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Calhoun.
I want to withdraw my motion, and I'll make a motion that there are available funds in the swap account, then we utilize those funds.
Okay. All right. It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we take the money from the swap fund. Okay. Discussion?
Wait a minute. Because one of those actually requires a supermajority, you're going to need to just determine whether or not you want to use the 05 swap money or the 07 swap money.
If it's the 05 that does not have the supermajority, that's what we're using. Is that the 05?
Is that correct, Ms. Woods? 05 is the one that does not require the supermajority. I think it's the other way around. It's the 07s that don't require it.
How much is in 07 and how much is in 05? And this one is not earmarked for anything, right?
It's not earmarked, supervisor. I think we should have some sort of discussion on the swap.
But that's why I said, with this next meeting, you have more discussion. You identify we do it, we don't have more discussion. There's no difference between this meeting and the next.
Right. We had not discussed the issue of using swap funds because there are different procedures to utilize that. We want to make sure we understand once we use that funds, what does it mean for the county?
Okay. I'm back to my original motion.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second, so we have to do is give Mr. Fisher a
I
second.
just want to get the elevators repaired.
Okay. We give Mr. Fisher withdraws his motion, then we're back to you. You're withdrawing your motion. That's fine. Now you can make your original motion as to what you want to do.
I move that we take from the 310 account $270,000, but up to $270,000 for the upgrade and repair of the elevators, or upgrade and modernization of the elevators, and that we move forward in advertising for the service to be provided.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of?
Aye.
Opposed to?
No.
Motion passes. Okay.
The money coming from